Welcome back to the Rock Vault, where the amps are always hot. Today, we spin back to the 1970s, when FM radio ruled and albums weren't just records. They were lifelines to who we were. From smoky dorm rooms to open-window drives, these LPs gave us anthems of love, rebellion, and freedom. Join us as we relive 10 rock albums that truly changed everything. Few albums define the 1970s quite like The Dark Side of the Moon. From the first heartbeat that opens the record, Pink Floyd invites you into a soundscape that was more than music. It was an experience. Layered synthesizers, haunting vocals, and David Gilmour's soaring guitar created a sonic journey that pushed rock into uncharted territory. This wasn't just an album you listened to, it was one you lived inside. Its production, guided by the genius of Alan Parsons, brought an otherworldly polish to tracks that dealt with timeless themes: madness, mortality, greed, and the passage of time. It wasn't about chasing chart success, though it did that in spades. This was about making a statement, a piece of art that turned hi-fi systems into portals. And for millions, it became the ultimate demonstration record, the vinyl you drop the needle on to test your speakers, your patience, and your soul. For those who were there, you remember the first time you heard it in full. Maybe it was in a friend's basement, the lights low with a lava lamp bubbling away in the corner, or maybe it was during a long drive on a highway at night. Headlights cutting through the dark as the voices in Time reminded you how fleeting youth could be. It wasn't background music. It demanded your full attention, rewarding you with goosebumps at every spin. Culturally, Dark Side became a symbol of the decade's restless search for meaning. It sat on the Billboard 200 for over 14 years, an untouchable feat that speaks to how deeply it resonated. College dorms had it propped up against turntables like a sacred text, and its prism cover became one of the most iconic images in rock history. The album wasn't just popular, it became woven into the DNA of 1970s life. Looking back, it's impossible to separate the decade from this masterpiece. It captured both the beauty and the weight of being alive in a turbulent time. And still today, when the opening heartbeat begins, you can feel yourself pulled back to youth, to discovery, to that moment when music felt infinite. There's a lady shoot on the clip. If one album stands as a monument to rock's sheer power, it's Led Zeppelin IV. Released in 1971 without even a band name or title on the cover, this record let the music speak for itself, and it roared. From the thunderous opening of Black Dog to the ethereal closing notes of When the Levee Breaks, this album wasn't just another release. It was a declaration of rock's limitless reach. But I got some good news, people. If there's a bus in your hedgerow. Jimmy Page's guitar playing felt like fire captured on vinyl, weaving riffs that blended blues grit with mystical flourishes. Robert Plant's voice soared with unrestrained passion, while John Paul Jones provided arrangements that gave the record its depth and texture. And John Bonham, with that iconic drum sound, especially on Levee, reminded us that rhythm could be as primal as a heartbeat. Led Zeppelin IV was raw, refined, ancient, and futuristic all at once. For many, this was the record that never left the turntable. Teenagers in 1971 huddled around stereos, lifting the needle back to the beginning of Stairway to Heaven, determined to unravel its mystery. Others blasted rock and roll from car speakers, the riff echoing down suburban streets. This album was everywhere, in smoke-filled basements, in high school parking lots, and at sprawling outdoor parties where everyone knew every word. even if they weren't sure what they meant. Culturally, the album became untouchable. It sold over 37 million copies worldwide and cemented Zeppelin's place atop the rock pantheon. But numbers don't tell the whole story. What made Led Zeppelin 4 immortal was how it felt. The gatefold artwork, the runes instead of names, the mystique. It all fed into the sense that this wasn't just music, it was legend. Each track carried its own world, medieval fantasy, blues-soaked swagger, or apocalyptic power. It was an album you could get lost in, and many of us did. Looking back, it's hard to imagine the 1970s without this record spinning somewhere in the background. It was more than a collection of songs. It was a rite of passage. Decades later, those first few notes of Stairway still hush a room, pulling listeners back to that time when Zeppelin seemed to channel something greater than themselves. This wasn't just rock. This was myth, carved into vinyl. Or when Rumors hit the shelves in 1977, it wasn't just another album release, it was lightning in a bottle. Fleetwood Mac, a band already known for their mix of British blues roots and California Polish, created something timeless in the middle of personal chaos. The songs brimmed with heartbreak, longing, and resilience, turning raw emotion into pristine, unforgettable rock. Every track carried a different shade of honesty. Lindsey Buckingham's sharp guitar riffs cut through like unspoken arguments, while Stevie Nicks' mystical vocals gave the record a haunting edge. Christine McVie's warm, steady presence balanced it all, offering melodies of hope amid turbulence. And behind it, Mick Fleetwood's steady drumming and John McVie's grounding bass kept the storm anchored. Together, they turned pain into art, and the world couldn't stop listening. For fans of the era, Rumors was the soundtrack to so many personal crossroads. Couples played it while trying to mend relationships, or maybe while letting them unravel. Dreams poured out of every FM radio that summer, drifting from car windows as people chased freedom down winding highways. In bedrooms and basements, listeners lay back with headphones on, every lyric feeling like it was written just for them. It wasn't just music. It was shared experience pressed into vinyl. Commercially, Rumors became one of the best-selling albums of all time, topping charts worldwide and winning Album of the Year at the Grammys. But its real impact was cultural. It reminded us that rock could be both intensely personal and universally relatable. Its clean production and layered harmonies set a new bar for what a rock album could achieve, proving vulnerability had its own kind of power. Decades later, its songs still resonate with the same emotional punch. Hearing those opening chords today can send you right back to the heartbreaks and healings of the 70s, to the long car rides, to the nights when you clutched that record sleeve like a diary. Rumors wasn't just an album. It was a mirror reflecting all of us, and it still does. By the end of the 1970s, rock was bigger, louder, and wilder than ever. And Highway to Hell was the album that captured its ferocious spirit. Released in 1979, it marked AC/DC's breakthrough into global superstardom, fueled by Angus Young's electrifying guitar riffs and Bon Scott's raspy, swaggering vocals. It wasn't polished, it was raw, unfiltered energy, the kind that shook arenas to their core. The album was built on simplicity. Straight-ahead rock and roll with no frills, yet that's exactly what made it unforgettable. The title track blasted out of radios like a thunderbolt, its chorus destined to echo through stadiums for decades. Songs like Girls Got Rhythm and Touch Too Much carried that same bluesy grit, while the band's chemistry tightened into something unstoppable. It was AC/DC distilled to its purest form, primal, powerful, and unapologetically loud. For many fans, Highway to Hell was the soundtrack to late-night mischief and rebellion. Teenagers cranked it up while cruising back roads in muscle cars, the speakers rattling with every riff, in packed high school gyms, garage parties, and roadside bars. This record provided the soundtrack to a generation that wanted their music fast, heavy, and full of attitude. It was the kind of album you felt in your chest, a pulse that matched your own. Tragically, Highway to Hell would also be Bon Scott's last album with the band before his untimely death in 1980. That fact only deepened its legacy. When fans drop the needle today and hear his voice cutting through the opening track, it feels like a time capsule, a final defiant statement from one of rock's most unforgettable frontmen. The impact was immediate and lasting. Highway to Hell stormed the charts, earning AC/DC their first taste of worldwide fame and laying the groundwork for their next colossal success, Back in Black. But this album stands on its own as a defining moment of 70s rock. Pure adrenaline pressed onto vinyl, a fiery anthem for anyone who ever felt the urge to crank the volume and let loose. Even now, those opening chords still hit like a jolt of electricity. It's not just a song, not just an album. It's a memory of freedom, rebellion, and the unstoppable force of rock at the height of its power. When Born to Run arrived in 1975, it wasn't just an album, it was a declaration. Bruce Springsteen, the scrappy kid from the Jersey Shore, poured every ounce of his ambition into this record, desperate to break free from obscurity and into the hearts of America. What he delivered was more than success. It was an anthem for dreamers, outcasts, and anyone chasing freedom on the open road. The sound was cinematic, almost operatic in scope. Layered guitars, Clarence Clemons' soulful saxophone, and pounding drums made each track feel like its own epic. Songs bled into each other with restless urgency, like chapters of a novel. It was rock and roll with a heart, not just loud, but alive, carrying stories of working-class kids with nothing to lose and everything to hope for. For fans who first heard it in '75, Born to Run was like gasoline on a spark. You remember the rush of dropping the needle, the way Thunder Road pulled you in gently before exploding into something bigger than life itself. Teenagers turned it up while dreaming about escaping small towns, while young couples clung to its lyrics like promises of better days. It was music that gave voice to the restless spirit of a generation. Culturally, the album saved Springsteen's career and redefined American rock. Rolling Stone put him on the cover, hailing him as the future of rock and roll. And suddenly, everyone knew the name Bruce Springsteen. It wasn't hype. It was recognition of an artist who could make you feel like your own struggles and dreams were etched into his songs. Looking back, Born to Run feels timeless because its themes never age. Freedom, love, desperation, hope, those are universal, and Springsteen delivered them with unmatched sincerity. Even today, hearing that soaring chorus can transport you straight to the mid-'70s, when rock wasn't just about sound, but about salvation. Springsteen once said he wanted Born to Run to sound like Roy Orbison singing Bob Dylan, produced by Phil Spector. He achieved exactly that, a wall of sound carrying poetry and passion. The result was a masterpiece that became both deeply personal and universally resonant. The kind of album that reminded us why we fell in love with rock and roll in the first place.
On a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair.
In 1976, the Eagles released Hotel California, and with it, they captured both the beauty and the darkness of the American dream. This wasn't just another album from a hugely successful band. It was a cultural statement, draped in shimmering guitar tones and harmonies so precise, they felt like silk stretched over steel. At its core, Hotel California was equal parts soft rock comfort and hard rock bite, a blend that defined the era.
Warm smell of colitas, rising up through the air.
The title track alone became legendary, opening with a guitar intro that sounded like the desert sun sinking into twilight. Don Henley's haunting vocals carried listeners into a story that felt both alluring and unsettling. Across the record, Joe Walsh and Don Felder's guitar interplay elevated the Eagles' sound to something sharper, more ambitious. Life in the Fast Lane ripped with energy, while New Kid in Town glowed with bittersweet reflection. This wasn't just a collection of songs, it was a cohesive vision, polished to perfection, yet heavy with meaning.
Up ahead in the distance, I saw a shimmer.
For those who lived it, Hotel California was everywhere. It spun constantly on FM radio, blasting from living room hi-fi systems and car stereos alike. Teenagers learned the dual guitar solo note for note, playing it endlessly in garages across America. Couples claimed Wasted Time as their own personal ballad, while partygoers let Life in the Fast Lane soundtrack their wild nights. It was an album that seemed to reflect every mood, every experience of the late 70s. Commercially, it was a juggernaut, topping charts worldwide and winning the Grammy for Record of the Year. But beyond accolades, the record struck a nerve because of its themes. The Eagles painted a picture of excess, temptation, and disillusionment, the shadows that crept behind the glitter of California living. For listeners, it was both glamorous and sobering, a reminder that the pursuit of paradise came with its costs.
Stop for the night. There she stood in the doorway.
Even now, hearing those opening chords instantly transports you back to 1976. You can picture the vinyl sleeve with its iconic cover, the warm crackle of the needle settling into the groove, and that sense of being pulled into a world both inviting and eerie. Hotel California didn't just define the Eagles, it defined a decade, reminding us that rock could be smooth as velvet yet cut deep into the soul. Looking back, its legacy is untouchable. The soaring guitar solo in the title track is still considered one of the greatest of all time, and the album remains a symbol of the 70s, a time of freedom, excess, and unforgettable music. In 1970, rock music took a darker, heavier turn, and Black Sabbath's Paranoid was the album that lit the fuse. While the decade was overflowing with folk harmonies and psychedelic experimentation, Sabbath arrived with a sound that was raw, sinister, and electrifying. Paranoid wasn't just another record. It was the blueprint for heavy metal, a record that still shakes the walls half a century later. From Tony Iommi's crushing guitar riffs to Ozzy Osbourne's eerie vocals, every track felt like a storm brewing. War Pigs thundered with anti-war fury. Paranoid delivered pure adrenaline in under 3 minutes. And Iron Man gave us one of the most iconic riffs of all time. Geezer Butler's bass lines rolled like earthquakes, and Bill Ward's drumming pounded like artillery. Together, the four of them created a sound that was heavier than anything that came before, pulling rock into uncharted, dangerous territory. For many fans, Paranoid was the soundtrack to rebellion. Teenagers cranked it up in bedrooms plastered with posters, the needle shaking as those opening chords rattled through their turntables. Some heard it at midnight gatherings, friends huddled around glowing stereos, feeling like they'd stumbled into a forbidden world. It wasn't polished or pretty. It was raw power, and it resonated deeply with those who felt alienated from the mainstream. Commercially, Paranoid shocked everyone by becoming a smash hit, topping the UK charts and climbing into the US top 10. Critics didn't always understand it, dismissing its heaviness. But fans knew better. The record spoke directly to a generation living with the anxieties of Vietnam, social upheaval, and an uncertain future. Its lyrics about war, madness, and alienation hit harder because they reflected the world outside. Looking back, it's impossible to imagine the 70s rock landscape without Paranoid. It was the dark counterpoint to the California sunshine sounds of the Eagles or Fleetwood Mac, proving that rock could be heavy, unsettling, and still wildly popular. More than that, it gave birth to an entirely new genre, inspiring countless bands who would carry the torch of metal into the decades ahead. Even now, dropping the needle on Paranoid feels like entering another dimension. The riffs still snarl, the drums still pound, and Ozzy's voice still sounds like a warning from the edge of time. It remains a defining album not just of the 70s, but of rock history itself, the moment when heavy metal announced itself to the world. When Deja Vu landed in 1970, it felt like a gathering of voices that perfectly captured the spirit of an unsettled era. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young blended four distinct talents into a single sound, fragile yet powerful, intimate yet anthemic. With harmonies that seemed to fall from the heavens and lyrics steeped in both love and protest, Deja Vu wasn't just an album. It was a reflection of a generation's hopes and struggles. Musically, the album was a kaleidoscope of folk rock, country tinges, and electric fire. Stephen Stills drove the band's harder edges, as in Carry On, while Neil Young's contributions, like Helpless, added vulnerability and stark honesty. Graham Nash gave warmth and melody, and David Crosby's dreamlike touch completed the circle. Together, their voices fused into something larger than the sum of its parts. A choir of 70s idealism wrapped in acoustic strums and electric flourishes. For fans of the time, Deja Vu was the soundtrack to both protest marches and quiet nights by the record player. College students blasted Almost Cut My Hair while letting their hair grow long in defiance of convention, while couples found tenderness in Teach Your Children, Drop the Needle on this record. And you could feel the crossroads of the 70s. War and peace, rebellion and reflection, the clash between chaos and calm.
If I had ever been here before, I would probably know just what to do.
Culturally, the album was monumental, topping the Billboard charts and quickly going platinum. More than that, it cemented CSNY as the voice of a restless generation searching for answers. These songs weren't just entertainment. They were conversation pieces, arguments, and comforts all rolled into one. For many listeners, owning Deja Vu meant owning a piece of history itself, one that spoke directly to the turbulent times.
Don't you? If I had ever been.
Even today, listening to those harmonies feels like time travel. You can picture the denim jackets, the fields of festivals, the smell of incense or cigarette smoke lingering in the air. Deja Vu wasn't just an album you heard. It was an album you carried with you, woven into your memories of youth, love, and resistance. It stands as proof that rock could be tender and political, electric and acoustic, dreamy and defiant, sometimes all within the same track. That balance is why it remains a cornerstone of 70s rock, a reminder of when music felt like the heartbeat of
Mama just killed a man.
In 1975, Queen released A Night at the Opera, and with it they forever changed what a rock album could be. It was bold, theatrical, and unapologetically grand, a record that fused hard rock with opera, balladry, and even a touch of vaudeville. If earlier albums of the decade broke boundaries, this one shattered them completely, proving rock could be.
Put a gun against his head, pulled my trigger now.
Musically, it was a kaleidoscope. Death on Two Legs snarled with venom. You're My Best Friend shone with tender warmth, and Love of My Life revealed Freddie Mercury's unmatched to turn vulnerability into majesty. But of course, it was Bohemian Rhapsody that stole the show, a 6-minute epic that blended opera, hard rock, and ballad into something utterly unique. No one had ever heard anything like it, and no one has truly replicated it since.
He's dead. Mama, life is just
For fans in the 70s, A Night at the Opera was a revelation. Picture yourself at a high school party where the stereo was the center of gravity. When Bohemian Rhapsody came on, the entire room sang along, from the gentle piano opening to the head-banging crescendo. Or imagine lying on your bed with the gatefold sleeve in your hands, marveling at the sheer audacity of a band that dared to dream this big. This wasn't background music. This was the soundtrack to unforgettable nights, laughter, heartbreak, and pure joy.
begun, but now they've gone and thrown it all.
Commercially, it was a triumph, giving Queen their first #1 album in the UK and breaking them into the US mainstream. But more than sales or charts, the record's impact was cultural. It taught us that rock didn't have to be confined. It could borrow from classical, jazz, theater, and still feel electric. It was proof that Freddie Mercury, Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon weren't just a band. They were visionaries. Looking back, A Night at the Opera feels like the perfect capstone to the 70s rock spirit, daring, emotional, and larger than life. Its songs still echo across generations, from karaoke nights to stadium sing-alongs. Decades later, the opening piano of Bohemian Rhapsody can still hush a crowd before lifting it into ecstasy. As finales go, it's hard to imagine a more fitting album to close this journey. A Night at the Opera wasn't just a record. It was proof that rock and roll could be art, theater, and pure electricity all at once. And there you have it. 10 albums from the 1970s that didn't just fill the airwaves. They defined our lives. These records were more than vinyl. They were passports to freedom, heartbreak, rebellion, and discovery. Decades later, their songs still pull us back to lava lamps glowing in the corner, denim jackets slung over chairs, and nights when music felt endless. Which of these albums takes you back the most? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, this is Rock Vault. Keep the vinyl spinning.